Greetings, I'm here to ramble about the DCEU. This is going to be a very rough video because it only exists for me to scream my thoughts into the void. I'll mainly be focusing on characters, how they're written, their arcs throughout movies, stuff like that, and some of the ideas I bring up were from a channel called Nando v Movies. It's a great channel, and I'll be linking to it to give credit to those ideas. I'm not going to touch on every movie in the DCEU. Wonder Woman, I love what it did with Diana's character. It felt amazing. Shazam, it honestly feels like what would happen if a teenager got superpowers and how they would act. And it also makes you want to hug your family, so that's a bonus. Aquaman's a bit of a mess at times, but it's a really fun mess, and it's still a really solid movie. Justice League. As I mentioned, I'm mainly focusing on the characters themselves rather than the plot and trying to just sort of make their actions more, change character motivations, flesh them out a bit more. And you can't really fix Justice League by simply elaborating on, Aquaman's reason for being there. So I'm not really going to be touching on that. Instead, I shall be starting with Man of Steel. Man of Steel is not a bad movie. In fact, it's really good. At least it's sometimes. But the issue is, it doesn't feel like a Superman movie. The character we watch is almost reluctant to help the people around him. And I don't think Superman should be reluctant. And this is supposed to be a more dark and gritty and realistic take on Superman. But life isn't all dark and gritty, and the movie just comes across as depressing at moments. And life is varied. It has bright moments, it has ups and downs, and the whole... You don't need to make something depressing to make it realistic. So taking a character that's usually one of the moral centers of DC in general, and turning him into a reluctant hero who almost doesn't feel like he wants to help people at times, it doesn't come across as the character you're trying to make. So, I think a way to improve this is to have more of a struggle between Clark's great desire to help people and his fear of what would happen if he does help these people. Clark should be desperate to help. He has these abilities. He should be able to do something. He should be able to save that bus. He should be desperate to help. But then he must be very, very afraid of what would happen, because people would be terrified of him because of his abilities. So this fear of being ostracized from society, of being shunned, of being viewed as a monster, it holds him back from helping. And this also gives him a clear arc throughout the movie of him helping in spite of his fears of rejection, of him doing good even though he could be viewed as a monster for his abilities, of being feared. And I feel like that's a really good take on Superman. You still have that struggle, and it does dip more into some of the darker sides of what would it actually be like. You would be terrified. You know how people always joke online oh, everyone's always never talks about superpowers because they could be experimented on. Well, that's a real threat for him, and having that fear overshadow his desire to help until the end where he overcomes that fear, that'd be a really solid arc for Clark. And speaking of where, Pa Kent dies, where Clark doesn't do anything, that's, one of the bigger moments where it feels like an issue. And Pa Kent can still die, but it should be something outside of Clark's control. It should be like a heart attack or whatever, because then that would emphasize that even with all of his abilities, with all of his, powers or whatever, Clark still can't save everybody. And this would lead really, really well into Batman v Superman. Now, after the whole Zod fight, there's a lot of destruction. There's a lot of death. And that should weigh on Clark's conscience very, very heavily. He should be not necessarily... He shouldn't be, regret fighting Zod. But he should regret that the fight happened and that so many people were hurt because of that fight. He should, and when the public's having these outcries of Superman shouldn't be doing this stuff, look at all the damage he caused, Clark should really consider that maybe I shouldn't be Superman. Maybe I am doing more harm than good by doing this. He should care so much that he's questioning his own actions and whether or not he's actually helping these people by using his abilities in this way. And we're going to rip off Civil War here, because that's such a good movie. It deserves to be ripped off. And there should be a scene where someone comes up to Superman and says, this is one of my loved ones who got hurt. You didn't save them, or they were crushed in some rubble. That was your fault. And it should just destroy Clark internally, because he cares so much. And even with all these godlike abilities, he can't save everyone. And so he's questioning what he is doing to save people. And that should be his struggle during that movie, is whether or not he's actually doing good by using his powers in that way, and whether Superman is actually a good thing, or if he's hurting people by being Superman. And we as an audience would know, no, it's like, it would have been way worse if Superman hadn't stepped in. Like, Zod would have just destroyed everything. But he cares so much that he's being irrational about it. He's being self-destructive in this, which is kind of hard for a guy who's like indestructible, but he's managing it. And I feel like that would be good, because then at the end of the movie, when they're fighting Luthor's monster or whatever, he gets the spear, Lois can be there and be like, Clark, you can't do this, you could die. And he'll be like, well, maybe I will. And then she'll be like, Clark, you can't save everyone. He's like, well, I have to try. And just like some version of that exchange. Because this could show that even if Clark, like, he's come to the realization that even if he does do some harm, even if people do get hurt, even if he gets hurt in the process, he still has to try. And even if bad things happen, he has to try. He has to do his best to do good. And that would be another solid arc for him in that movie. Because in that movie, he doesn't feel like he cares. In all honesty, he's just like, he's like, people are saying Superman's bad, and he's just like, well, I just saved you. And it's just, meh. He just feels upset to be Superman. And he's back to that reluctant hero thing. So instead of having him just be reluctant to help people, just have him be so caring that he's questioning whether he should actually be doing this. And that type of irrational thought and how it's actually playing out in his head. And actually, this will reflect really well off of how we're doing Batman in this movie, or how I'm doing Batman in this movie. Now, first off, we're scrapping all the stuff about the Wayne parents' murder. It's all gone, because we don't need to rehash that. Everyone knows Batman's backstory. We all know what happened, but we are going to replace it with the death of Robin. Instead of death of his parents, we're doing the death of his son. Because it kind of upset me that Robin, this huge character, one of the most important figures in Batman lore, was killed, which is a big freaking moment. And the only explanation that we got of this, the literal only explanation we got, was one shot of a suit with graffiti. And they killed off this major character, and we didn't even see it on screen. I mean, people talked about how they did Jimmy Olsen dirty by having him be like a CIA spy guy that got shot, but they didn't even show the death of Robin. They didn't even say his name. So, we're going to use this, because exploring the consequences of such a big event is important. And there are two main core tenets of Batman. Like, two of the main. There are others, but two of the most important are he doesn't kill and he doesn't use guns. And both of these rules are broken in Batman v Superman. And I'm not saying these rules can't be broken. It can explore some really interesting stuff when they are. But you need to explain why. And they didn't really explain why. They just wanted a darker and grittier version of Batman, which he's already dark and gritty, but they went all in for it. And they wanted a dark and grittier version of Batman, so they just gave us one without no explanation. And I feel like they could use the death of Robin to sort of fuel this darker and this version of Batman who does kill, who brands criminals. And I feel like that would be interesting. Because, so there'll be like flashbacks and stuff to like when Robin was alive. I actually did some research, and turns out the Robin that was killed wasn't Jason Todd, but it was Richard Grayson. So Richard Grayson's dead. His only son was killed by the Joker. And that's gotta, like, destroy someone. So, like, you could show some shots of when they're happy when he's first becoming Robin, then show, how he was killed or whatever, like, that whole thing, that whole lead up, and, like, all the weird flashbacks that you get of the Wayne's murder with the pearls or whatever. This is gonna be replaced by stuff about, like, Robin's death, and that's gonna be shown to directly be what turned Batman into this killer. So that he just, like, after the loss of his son, he just lost it. And that's, I feel like, is an interesting story. Because this happened in the comics to some degree. After the death of Jason Todd, Batman, like, went off the rails. And he was, like, beating muggers half to death. And he just, like, he was horrible. And then we had, like, Tim Drake step up and, like, pull him back in line. But this is a universe where Tim Drake didn't step up. This is where he just kept going and going until he did cross that line. And that could be really interesting to explore. To have this version of Batman who's just so consumed by loss that he's just taking it out on everyone. And how he's going to play off Superman is going to be really interesting. Personally, and this is more how I view Batman, I think a lot of his behavior makes sense. If you think that, like, on some level, Batman has this, like, desperate need to save people, like, everybody. That everyone deserves a chance to be saved. This explains why he's constantly throwing these, like, major villains and horrible people into Arkham instead of just sending them to jail, because he believes they deserve the chance to be saved. That they deserve to try and get better. Even though, like, everyone else thinks this is irrational, he still has this level that thinks everyone deserves a chance. This is why he keeps taking in orphans off the street. He's trying to help them. And I feel like, it's not always explicit, but I feel like it explains a lot of his actions, that he thinks everyone deserves a chance to be saved. And as we established earlier, this was a big part of Superman's current philosophy. But after losing his son, Batman, like, completely shreds that philosophy. And he's just out here to punish criminals, and, like, it's just, he's horrible to them because he doesn't really think people deserve to be saved anymore. He's just out here punishing them willy-nilly with the branding or with the, just, he shot a couple guys, I'm pretty sure, like, some henchmen or whatever. Just, he's out here being crazy. And one interesting thing, I think, is instead of having there be a huge crime wave in Gotham should have lower levels of crime than ever before. Like, people are so afraid of the Bat that they're, like, actually not doing stuff, but it's not, like, a good situation. It's more of, like, people are so afraid of the totalitarian regime that they don't rise up, or whatever. This is an extreme example to call Batman a totalitarian regime, but you guys get the idea. So, his methods are effective, but they're brutal. So, and that's what Superman doesn't like, is how brutal Batman's being. So he steps in and, like, this would replace that scene with the car where Batman's like, do you bleed? And it's, like, really weird. Instead, we're going to have Superman saying, like, you can't do this, you can't punish them like this. And then Batman's like, well, they deserve it. And Superman's like, well, everyone deserves a chance to be saved. Or, like, better written version of this scene. And Batman just, like, stares at him for a second, and he's like, says, let's see if you still believe that after you lose someone close to you, or, like, that after that rationality gets someone close to you killed. Sorry, something got in the way of the camera. But, and so, and, like, maybe it'll flash back to, this would replace the, like, scene where Lois is in the Middle East, and she's like, and, like, Superman saves her. Where instead of having that scene, Lois is in danger, but he's saving, like, more people, and she ends up getting hurt, whether it's directly caused because he, like, punched someone out of the way and they hit Lois, or he was busy saving the other people and Lois got hurt. And then, like, he'll be thinking about that scene when, like, Batman says, let's see if your, like, desire to save everyone, let's see if you still believe that after those close to you are killed because of that belief. And just having this play off of someone who does believe everyone should be saved and someone who used to believe everyone should be saved but no longer believes that and thinks the bad should be punished to, like, whatever degree. And I feel like that would be a really good, like, struggle of morality between the two. And they don't really have a struggle of morality in Batman v Superman. It's more they don't like each other, so they fight. And this is supposed to be some big, like, ideological thing. There isn't really an ideological difference. It's just Batman's afraid of Superman because he's powerful, and Superman doesn't like how brutal Batman is, so they fight. And Luthor had something to do with it. That's just it. So I feel like this, wow, that's just being annoying. But so I feel like this struggle between whether or not people deserve a chance to be saved, isn't that, I think something like that happened in Wonder Woman. So just themes throughout the DCEU, whether, like, people always deserve a chance to be saved, or being consistent here. But, I think that would just be a better, just ideological difference between the two, because Batman knows what it's like to have that ideology, and he lost it for a good reason. His son was killed, so at this point he just, like, stopped thinking of criminals as people. And that's a really good way to use Robin's death, I feel, too. It shows that, like, it's just a really good way to use it, instead of just a single shot that's never explained. I'm not over that. And then by the end of the movie, Superman can be like, save my mother, because Luthor has his mother, and we're not saying Martha because we're scrapped all that, so it's just going to be save my mother. And Batman has this realization that that Superman's an actual person. He's an actual person with family instead of just this all-powerful god who does what he pleases. And he was about to put another parent through what he went through. He was about to take someone's child from them, the very thing that sent him on this dark path. And that realization sort of snaps him out of this murderous rage he's been in, and it shows him that even the worst that he's faced, to have family, and he's been taking people's family from them, and it sort of like makes him reflect on, oh wait, I've been doing such horrible stuff, and it sort of like makes him reflect on all that, and I feel like that's a good way to come full circle for it. Feels like a solid way for like Batman to not only spare Superman but realize that, hey, I haven't really been doing too good here. And then we get the fight, and he dies, and Bruce blames himself, because Bruce always blames himself, doesn't he? And yeah, I just feel like that's a much more solid way to do Batman v Superman. Next up, Suicide Squad. Now, first off, the issue with Suicide Squad is we don't have a main character. And we need a main character to have someone to relate to from the audience's perspective. So just the two best options are Harley or Deadshot. I feel like Harley's a much more interesting option to see things from her perspective, but if you prefer Deadshot, let's have the movie from Deadshot's perspective. It's going to be great. 2, the reason that the team goes in should be like an actual reason to use the team, like to fight the Enchantress. Like literally any team could be used. They could have used soldiers, would have been fine, but they don't really need the special ops team. The reason that the Suicide Squad exists is to do things that the government can't be linked to, or that the government wants to do but legally can't, or that even just Amanda Waller wants to do that she legally can't. So their mission should be like to steal stuff. And you know how Marvel's like been saying how they do superhero movies, but with like Winter Soldier was a spy thriller superhero movie, and then Ant-Man and the Wasp was a rom-com superhero movie. We had a summer road trip movie, superhero movie with Thor Ragnarok. This is going to be a heist film superhero movie, or heist film supervillain movie. So like Ocean's 11, but with the Suicide Squad. And the thing they're stealing is either going to be like some foreign thing that the government wants, but they can't legally get because of some treaty or whatever, or some like legal thing. So they send in the squad to steal it, because the squad's not like actually linked to the government, so they can steal something, and if it goes wrong, they can blame them without actually getting in trouble. Or even better, I feel like someone else in the government is has something that Amanda Waller wants, so she's stealing from her own government in this case. And I feel like that would be interesting, because it shows just how she does what she thinks is best despite what's legal and despite the morality of it. So maybe there's some general that has something that she wants, or is part of something that she wants to be a part of but can't legally do. So she sends in the Suicide Squad to steal whatever this is. And I feel like that's like the best use of the Suicide Squad, and we're either following Deadshot or Harley's perspective during this movie. And I think that's just that would be a fun movie to have, like just like a heist film but with villains. That'd be so fun to have. And yeah, that's just the main points that I think would improve the DCEU. More compassionate Superman, make Robin's death matter and explore the consequences of that on Batman, and that's why he became crazy or whatever. And supervillain heist film. That feels like the best ways to improve this.